heavy pipe striking bone, a razor passing through tensioned fabric. The physics of these two forces are entirely distinct. Yet on the surface of human skin, a blunt force split and a sharp force cut can present as identical, clean, linear wounds to a first responder. The gross appearance of a trauma often masks the true mechanical event that caused it. What looks like a slice can actually be a tear. What appears to be a violent attack can be meticulously self-inflicted. Forensic pathologists do not rely on subjective observation. They decode the objective, microscopic morphology of tissue to reconstruct the specific event for the courtroom. To accurately translate these biological records, investigators must dismantle three specific diagnostic illusions: distinguishing living bruises from postmortem artifacts, separating blunt tears from sharp cuts, and mapping true defensive struggles against fabricated crime scenes. This diagram details the physiological requirement for a true contusion. Antemortem pressure must force blood out of a ruptured dermal vessel. This active extravasation contrasts with postmortem hypostasis. Once the heart stops, gravity pulls blood downward into dependent capillaries, but crucially, those microvessels remain intact. Because early hypostasis can perfectly mimic the discoloration of a bruise, pathologists rely on a definitive physical test on the autopsy table. This table outlines the incision and pour water protocol. Flushing hypostasis with water washes the blood away because it remained within unbroken capillaries. Conversely, true contusion blood persists. Once forced into the interstitial tissue by a beating heart, it cannot be rinsed out. Once a true contusion is confirmed, the degraded blood provides an exact timeline of the violence. This top section tracks the enzymatic breakdown of hemoglobin. The conversion to hemosiderin predictably turns the tissue brown at 4 to 5 days, while further degradation into bilirubin shifts the color to yellow by day 7 to 12. Verifying vascular extravasation through these exact parameters establishes the biological threshold between a passive physical artifact and a living body's reaction to blunt trauma. Even when trauma occurs before death, a mechanism remains hidden. A prime example is the split laceration, a specific type of blunt force injury that expertly mimics the clean line of a knife cut. This occurs when a heavy impact strikes skin directly over a solid bony prominence, like the skull vault or the shin. The extreme compression overstretches the dermal layers until the mechanical tension forces the tissue to violently tear apart from the center outward. This diagram illustrates the pathognomonic marker of a blunt force split: tissue bridges. While the skin splits under tension, elastic internal blood vessels and nerve fibers resist the crushing force, remaining intact and spanning across the floor of the wound gap. Compare that blunt presentation with this diagram of a true incised wound. The sharp edge cleanly severs the epidermis, underlying vessels, and hair bulbs at the floor of the wound. The gap is completely hollowed out, leaving zero tissue bridging. Pathologists further analyze the shallow tailing at the extreme edges of an incised wound to pinpoint the precise direction the blade was drawn across the body. The gross macroscopic surface of the injury is entirely unreliable. The true weapon is identified by analyzing the microscopic wreckage left on the wound floor. Beyond identifying the weapon, the spatial distribution of these injuries acts as a map of the subject's psychological intent during the event. This outlines the geometry of genuine defensive wounds. Active defense injuries occur when a victim deliberately grasps the weapon, concentrating lacerations on the palmar surfaces. Alternatively, instinctively raising arms to shield the core causes passive defense wounds, chaotic slashes along the forearms. These deep, irregular traumas are the antithesis of fabricated or hesitational injuries. Notice the meticulous control evident in these parallel, strictly localized cuts. This section details criteria for identifying a staged event. Fabricated injuries are typically superficial, perfectly linear, and localized to accessible target zones. The definitive behavioral marker is preservation. While genuine assaults tear garments, fabricated injuries universally leave clothing untouched. Mapping the exact geometry of the damage effectively separates the chaotic reality of a physical struggle from a meticulously controlled, self-inflicted narrative. When a pathologist confirms extravasated blood, rules out tissue bridging, and maps trauma to the ulnar margin of the forearm, the diagnostic parameters lock into place. The physical evidence objectively outputs a specific sequence of events: sharp force trauma, sustained in a defensive posture. Human tissue serves as a high-fidelity biological recording medium, capturing the exact physics and behavioral intent of a violent encounter. Reading that record correctly demands looking past the subjective, macroscopic noise to isolate the structural facts. Proving extravasation, identifying microscopic bridging, and measuring wound geometry transforms the silent anatomy of a victim into an articulate, irrefutable witness. In forensic traumatology, the most destructive evidence in a court of law is rarely the largest wound. It is the microscopic signature of truth left embedded in the dermis.